Does Charleston flood? Should I stay away from the coast? How much does flood insurance cost? Will I have to leave if a storm comes? And these are all great questions, and I get them pretty frequently from folks considering a move here. And in this video, I'm going to show you the main areas in Charleston that flood, what to be careful about when choosing a location, everything I know about flood insurance, and at the end, I'll share with you how I was able to identify most of the areas that are prone to high water. So this is going to be a valuable video. And boy, all of this sounds way worse than it is. It's really not that scary here. Okay, before I get into it, my name is Nat Wallen. I was born here, I went to college here, and I've been helping people buy and sell homes in Charleston since 1995. And if you're moving here, well, you need to make confident decisions, which is why I'm here and why I created this channel. So please watch this whole video, and if you find it helpful, please do like and subscribe. This helps the channel grow, and thank you. Thank you very much. Just like and subscribe now. Oh, and also it is February now. Alexa, what's the temperature?
Right now, it's 62 degrees Fahrenheit. Tonight, expect a low of 62 degrees.
Not too bad for the winter time. It is unseasonably warm here right now. It's typically 50s, but anyway, not too bad. I'll show you what the winter time looks like in this video too, because we're going to go outside a little bit. Okay, flooding in Charleston. It looks absolutely terrifying if you Google it. I've seen college kids wakeboarding behind golf carts. I've seen people kayaking down the streets. And if you go by just this imagery alone, you will want to move to the middle of the country for sure. But there are too many great things about Charleston to let a little water scare you away. And real quick, I am not one to sugarcoat anything at all. Never say never. We are on the coast. So this video is completely based on my personal experience. This is my home, but I am not a scientist. I've lived here forever. I've seen what I've seen, but do your own due diligence. Okay, when I say a little water, let me explain. If you look at a map of downtown Charleston today, here it is right here, and then a map of Charleston back in 1872, that's an old one, you'll see that downtown Charleston, it used to be a lot smaller on one side specifically. So this is the Cooper River side, this is the harbor, and then this is the Ashley River. And this whole area here, it used to be underwater. It was filled in years ago, I believe in colonial times, or Civil War times, and now there are homes in this whole pocket here on the Ashley River side of the downtown peninsula. And Charleston has a 5.5 foot tide, and it goes up and down every 6 hours. So as each day progresses, the tides move up an hour. In other words, if high tide is at 3 p.m. today, then tomorrow it will be at 4 p.m. And that's how it works. It just kind of cycles its way through the hours. So is flooding an issue here in Charleston? Well, according to NOAA, let's pay it a visit here. This is the Hollings Marine Laboratory, and they keep an eye out for basically everything saltwater. It's at the end of Fort Johnson Road on James Island. And James Island has many homes that were built in what's called pre-FIRMA, which I will get to shortly. This is important if you choose to buy an older home here. Now, Hollings Marine Laboratory, they are a research lab. Let me just show it to you for a minute. This is a pretty part of Charleston, and you'll see the harbor really well too. So this lab, they do everything to protect the salt water here. Like I said, they check oyster populations, they look at crabs and shrimp, and all the delicious seafood that we get here. They are here to protect those resources. And they, in conjunction with the NOAA office in Park Circle, let's zip over there real quick. It's located at the old Navy base in North Charleston. And NOAA stands for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They work with the National Weather Service. And while they're the ones that, they advise us on what to be careful of regarding weather. So you've heard the emergency broadcast system that blares across the TV and the radio, that tone. We don't hear those beeps too often here. Anyways, the tide goes up and down, and it rises and falls by 5.5 feet every 6 hours. And this is totally normal. When Charleston has a moon tide, or what's called a king tide, well, this is when the moon is either new or full and it's closest to the Earth in its monthly orbit. And we start to see rising waters, specifically on Lockwood Boulevard. Let me show you. And again, this is the battery, and this end has been recently rebuilt and raised. And it really turned out nice, but I don't think they did that because of the hurricane, because it's just not that common where water comes rushing over these walls. This isn't like New Orleans where they have this levee. If you've ever been to New Orleans, you're in the city and you're looking up at this wall and then there's water up here. It's kind of crazy. But anyway, I think it was more political with a fairly new mayor and just general civic planning and improvements. But there were city blocks here that got a lot of water during Irma. Remember the map from 1872. Much of this was underwater. But now let's take a big picture look at the rest of Charleston. So here's the area most prone for flooding, where we started. And then here's the entire area. It includes a total of 3 counties. And yes, there is minor flooding that can occur. We are called the Low Country for a reason. And I was able to identify these areas back in 2015, which I'll get to. That was called the 1,000-year storm. I'll get to that at the end of this video. So again, do stick around. But for now, let's answer those questions from the beginning. Does Charleston flood? Yes. But it's not like I'm hiking up my jeans every time it rains. Well, I take that back. Sometimes in the summer, my neighborhood has issues. One second, I'll show you. Like this corner here, the drain backs up. It's because there are a bunch of sticks and stuff plugging it up. So this area puddles, and this will be solved when I call the city and ask them to come clear it, which I will do because it's kind of a pain in the neck. Next question, should I stay away from the coast? Well, the glaciers are melting, so there is that. But again, I don't sugarcoat stuff, but will any of that cause issues in our lifetime? Maybe it's already happening, I'm not sure. But we do have these barrier islands, which may not do much for a polar melt, but they are good barriers for when hurricanes come, and they typically get the brunt of it, these barrier islands. What have we got next? How much does flood insurance cost? This is a good question. Let's go outside. Okay, so this is my backyard. I live on the water. Let me just flip this around here. So this is the Ashley River behind me. So we're right on the river. We bought it in 2004. But anyway, we're right on the river, and I don't have to have flood insurance, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but I'm not required to have flood insurance. I do have it, but we are, on a bluff, and I don't have to have flood. So that's the river in the background. Now let me show you my neighbor's house. One second. Get right here. Sorry. Okay. So my neighbor's house right behind me, it's that big brick one right there. Really nice house. That one does have flood insurance. So it doesn't make a lot of sense, like I said, but that's the way it is. Okay. My neighbors, I just texted them. They are in a flood zone and they pay something like $600 a year. Okay. In all practicality, when I see flood insurance when I'm out working and just researching, when I see flood insurance that costs more than, say, $1,500 a year, that's when things start to seem a little bit high to me. I would expect the average flood cost in Charleston to fall somewhere in the $600 to $1,500 a year range, with a few areas that can certainly go a little bit higher. I know of 2 or 3 where the flood costs are pretty high. They're $2,000 to $3,000, some $4,000, but I'm not going to identify those in this video because, well, I don't want to upset anybody trying to sell. But if we choose to work together, I will let you know what I know, and my team will as well. Now, what more can I say about flood insurance? Houses are engineered with flood insurance in mind, and that's because they're being built in what's called post-FIRMA. Now, pre-FIRMA is after the flood maps were drawn. Pre-FIRMA is before the flood maps were drawn, obviously pre, and then post is where we are now after the flood maps. And I think they were drawn sometime in the mid-1980s. So we have Zone X, which is what I'm in. I don't have to carry flood, but I do, and I think we pay $450 a year. And then there's an AE flood zone, and there are different levels of that, and those are most common here. My neighbors are in an AE zone, and even though I am technically closer to the water, again, I don't have to have flood insurance. They're across the street. They do. Makes no sense to me, but that's the way it is. And then there's what is called a V zone. And V stands for velocity, and that's basically front beach. And those policies can be $5, $6, $9, $10, $12,000 a year, maybe more. Now, flood insurance is backed by FEMA, and they offer a cap of $250,000 for flood coverage. But you can also get private flood coverage as well. That will cover more than that if you're worried or just want to shop around. Okay, remember I said that homes are engineered with flood insurance in mind. So we have 3 foundation types here in Charleston. We have slab foundations, and that's a solid bed of concrete, and they build them on the ground at ground level because they can. So flood insurance may either be very minor with these slab homes or just not required at all. And a slab home is also the most energy efficient because the temperature of the ground, it's pretty constant here, and it's a good insulator with no chance of air leakage. Now, we also see raised slabs in new construction, and they may have been raised because of the flood insurance, but it also might just be a design decision because some people like to walk up into their homes at least 3 or 4 steps. My home here is on a crawl space. I could crawl underneath it, and my home was built pre-FIRMA, so it was built in 1966. So it was built way before flood maps were even a thing. And there are lots of older homes in Charleston like mine. And remember I said that flood insurance is backed by FEMA? Well, for the homes that were built prior to flood maps, again, like mine, well, they're grandfathered in, meaning the bottom of the first floor of an older home could be lower than today's requirement. So they measure flood insurance and the requirement by the height of the first finished floor. So that's how a builder knows how high to go, because that's what the flood elevation certificate does. And we'll get into that at another time. But this is something you do have to be mindful of for sure if you're buying an older home. And again, we can help you with that. And I say this because there was a period of time when this grandfathering actually went away. It was back in '05, and people with older homes got some heavy flood insurance bills, like scary heavy. And that was quickly resolved in the legislature, but that was a little reminder to check the height of the bottom of the first floor. So this is something, again, we will do should you choose to buy an older home. There are lots of really nice areas close to downtown, which is a plus. So buying an older home is not a bad thing in Charleston. But for informational purposes, as part of our due diligence, and real quick on due diligence, our contracts have changed recently. So that's another good reason to subscribe. But watch the next video after this one, where I will explain how home inspections work here. There are some sticky points that you need to know about. Okay, last question. Will I have to leave if a storm comes? Well, in my experience, yes and no. I was here for Hurricane Hugo back in 1989. It was a direct hit. If there's one coming that has sustained winds of over 120 miles per hour, I will plan to leave. It's just very inconvenient to lose power. And the good news is that we haven't seen anything like that hit here since Hugo in '89. I mean, we stayed and it was pretty scary. I actually went to the hospital that morning because all these bees came out of the ground, and there was an African American there that was caught out in the storm. This was back in September of 1989, and his skin was actually pink because of all the pine needles. I think he had chained himself to a pine tree. Now, I was fine, but obviously pretty rough for him. But the good news about hurricanes is that you can see them coming, especially today with the Weather Channel. And let me back up. We may have had some higher wind gusts. I believe we had one a year or two ago that might have been in the 130 range. But what I'm talking about is sustained winds, like not going below 120 miles per hour. I'm out. So we went to the North Carolina mountains a couple years ago. We call it a hurrication, but we could have stayed. We just wanted to get out of town. Okay, remember I said I can help you identify low areas in Charleston, and I will not show them on this video because, again, I don't want to upset anyone trying to sell their home. But back in October of 2015, we had what was called the 1,000-year flood. So imagine this, October 1st, 2015, and lasting until the 4th, Charleston in some places received 26 inches of rain. That's as much water as we get in a year typically. And this caused low areas to show themselves to me and my team. The water table filled up and it came bubbling up through the ground. And many people with crawl space homes like mine, they had their ductwork ruined. Bad for them, but good for you, because we, again, meaning my team and I, We now know where those places are for the most part. And again, I'm not going to publish these areas, but if you do decide you need our help, you can reach out to us here at natwallen.com. Let me show you. Oh, also we talked about the different types of foundations. I didn't finish that part. There's one more. So remember we have slabs and raised slabs and then crawl spaces. Well, we also have elevated homes. And this doesn't mean that water comes rushing through every time it rains. Most, if not all of these homes have never seen water, but they build them again with the 1,000-year floods in mind. And I guess we need to worry now about the Arctic melting too. I believe it's happening. And many people choose to build this way because they get a lot of storage underneath. So we don't have basements here. And if the flood maps say they need to be off of the ground by, say, 5 feet, well, many people opt to go a few feet more so they can get a big garage. If you see air conditioner units that are lifted way up high on a platform, that's a good indicator that the flood zone is dictating things. And you can also see it in the electrical outlets in these garages. So again, if we choose to work together, we'll probably see some examples of that as well. Now, if you go to this niche properties on my website, it's on pretty much every page, and then you look for elevated homes, there it is. This will show you all of the elevated homes in the different parts of town, and it's a popular design, and I would still expect flood insurance to fall somewhere in that $600 to $1,500 range. So, and this is it, really. This is everything about flood insurance that I know. You'll want to see the next video, though, for sure, on the due diligence period. I don't want to say it's a trap, but it might feel like one if you get caught in a repair situation without knowing the details. It's this next video right here, and I'll see you in that one too. Thank you so much for being here.